let's begin our business of shaping policy for today by looking at the latest development in South Africa. We're looking at the largest battery system, storage battery system in Africa, in South Africa, which the UK has committed a sum of $300 billion. The question is, what is the interest for UK here, and what will be the impact of this project for South Africa, who is battling with the issue of energy supply and power supply in recent times? Let's take the conversation to our in-house guest. We're being joined by Sam Orovwuje as usual. Glad to have you join us this morning.
Good morning, Femi. My pleasure to be here.
Good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning, Blessing. Thank you.
It's been like a week or more.
I
So
think
we're glad that you're back here.
Yeah, thank you.
You know, once Sam is not here, he's busy behind the scene.
Of course we know.
You know.
Thank you very much indeed.
All right, glad to have you join us. Let's look at this project, the largest single battery storage system in South Africa, which the UK is committing a sum of $300 million. That's huge. Let's start with you giving us background about this project, and precisely what do you think would be the impact of this kind of project for South Africa?
All right, thank you very much indeed. This project is to drive renewable energy transition in South Africa, and the UK government has committed over $300 million to this project. This project is called the Red Sand project, that is based in North Cape of South Africa. The idea is to find a way to drive the process of energy transition in Africa. And one of the biggest generation company called Globelec, they have a branch even in Nigeria, has won the bid for that project. So it's a transition for renewable energy, which will support the energy transition in South Africa. So that commitment is part of the strategic relationship between the UK and South Africa to drive that process. So that commitment, to a very large extent, is not really free. Is a support that will aid a transition to renewable energy.
So with this storage battery system that is going to be built within a 24-month period in South Africa, South Africa is going to have no more issues, or is expected not to have issues with power supply. Now, how do you think this will affect the businesses and industries in South Africa?
There is an expectation that the energy challenge that South Africa, which is even the one of the greatest countries in Africa that has more power generation, and this renewable energy option will help to scale up the energy. So the challenge in terms of energy supply will improve drastically, and that will improve on businesses in South Africa.
Now, looking at this level of investment on the part of the UK government, why do you think they're quite interested in a project like this, then committing a huge sum of about $300 million? What is the need for UK?
Like I said earlier, it's not really free lunch. It's a project that they have committed that money. So they have some relationship with the Red Sand project. That's why they are committing that amount of money. And I think over a period of time, that investment will get back to the UK. So there's something in it for them as a country. So, but what is important is that South Africa is going to benefit from that project. And I think once that project becomes very successful in South Africa, I'm sure they will scale that project elsewhere in Africa in the nearest future, maybe after the 24-month test. So the bid process took a long while, and Globelec, which is a major energy generation company, has won that bid, and within 24 months, they were able to deliver that project to South Africa.
So the question now is, why South Africa? I knew that this is not a free project for Globelec, but why South Africa? There are other countries that are battling with power issues. Is it a thing of where they think they can recoup the money from?
Yeah, that's number one. Two, I think the enabling environment is there, and I'm sure that when they did their viability and feasibility study, North Cape of South Africa may just have that kind of business environment that will sustain that project.
Let's look at the company who actually won the bid for this project. That is Globelec. You know, if you look at what they've done in Tanzania, even in South Africa, they provided about 1,800 megawatts, and in some other African countries, including Nigeria. Are you quite optimistic that this company will be able to handle this project, and then will be able to deliver within the time frame, you know, allocated, which is like 2 years?
Yes, if you look at the selection and the bid process, for a company like that to have successfully got into the final process of the bid and the contract has been given to that company, there's no doubt in my mind that they'll be able to deliver on that value. Mind you, it's one of the largest generating company in Africa. To that extent, therefore, I'm sure they have the capacity and the capability to deliver on that project.
So for this project that Globelec is embarking on, it's going to be based on renewable energy, and it's going to give them at least about over 300 megawatts, 300 to 600 megawatts. But Nigeria is still battling around 5,000, sometimes 12,000 megawatts. The transition from hydropower or having an energy mix where you have renewable energy, isn't there something that other African countries should be looking at? And if you're not currently looking at it on this large scale, what could be the reasons?
I think Globelec itself is operating in Nigeria, and those kind of mix that you mentioned are on the pipeline. But how soon the government is able to conclude some of those discussions with Globelec so that they can build battery power systems that will help us to transit into renewable energy. So the political will and the kind of investment in that industry is a major challenge in Nigeria. So hopefully the UK government, that is a major funder for that project, I hope they will fund our project in Nigeria in the nearest future, in my view.
Now, citing the largest storage battery system in South Africa, you know, what might likely be other impacts of that, other opportunities that will provide, an impact of that on the economy of South Africa, apart from the fact that it's going to make impact on the energy sector? What are other prospects and opportunities, you know, citing this kind of factory in South Africa?
I think it's interesting to note that South Africa is the most industrialized country in Africa. So the kind of imperative that brought about that project is to sustain that industrial complex that South Africa has, and they are able to recoup their investment in the shortest possible time based on that. So, and I think that calculation is based on the business viability of South Africa to be able to take that power generation, kind of renewable power generation from Globelec that is providing that red sand project in North Cape of South Africa. At the end of the day, that environment will be able to sustain the investment that has been made for that project.
The resources needed for this storage battery system, most of it are going to be gotten from South Africa. We have situations where primary products have been found in some African countries here, but they are exported, and then the finished products are brought in here. But the reverse is the case. A factory is going to be sited in South Africa, converting this to energy. This model that South Africa has adopted, should it not be something that other African countries use?
Yes, I'm sure that even the service provider, that's Globelec, we use this as a marketing strategy to be able to do businesses with other African countries. Like I mentioned earlier, they are already in Nigeria doing business. Maybe this project will find a way to get into our environment, but the degree to which the funding or investment will come quickly is a different subject matter. But hopefully, since South Africa has become a gateway in terms of renewable energy with this kind of massive investment. I'm sure that it will be replicated elsewhere in Africa within the shortest possible time, maybe after 24 months when this project has been delivered.
When you have this kind of sensitive project, especially when it involves, a local country and a foreign one, you usually have, experts being brought in to handle this kind of project. What kind of arrangement would you expect should be put in place to ensure that the technology, the transfer of knowledge are properly done in a way that they are localized, and then South Africans could own this project and that sense of belonging will be there?
Yes, I'm sure that South Africa will have ownership because the operating environment is conducive, and I'm sure that South Africa is an industrial complex in a matter of speaking in Africa, so I'm sure that they're able to take transfer of technology in terms of the human resource, in terms of the technical knowledge that project will bring to South Africa. I don't have any doubt in my mind that technology will be transferred, human capacity as well. Then in terms of the partnership between Globelec and other subsidiary company that will help to pull that project through, will impact on the economy of South Africa in terms of technology, in terms of knowledge, and in terms of human resource.
Apart from the economic reasons, which may be the ability for the Globelec to recoup their fund or UK to recoup their investment fund from South Africa, what other things do you think has positioned South Africa to this favorable investment?
Yeah, I've mentioned that based on the industrial configuration of South Africa, then when you make that kind of massive investment, the energy, renewable energy that will be gotten from it will be channeled to industry, and industry are able to pay for the services, and they're able to recoup their investment based on the projections they've made for that project.
When it comes to power generation or energy mix in Africa, most African countries are struggling. Why do we have this peculiar situation in Africa? And then what are the shortfalls when it comes to this power sector? What are the critical things that should be done to ensure that this sector becomes better? Because if you look at South Africa, Tanzania, look at Nigeria as well, it looks like a common problem when it comes to Africa. What are the peculiarities about these sectors and these challenges, and what should be done to tackle them?
I think the challenge, number one, has to do with governance and corruption issues. We cannot overemphasize the issues of corruption. If you look at Nigeria in particular, there was a massive investment in power generation, and there were stories that were being told about 18 billion US dollar, I think, was invested in that sector, and the impact was not seen. And I think this is replicated in some other African country that has issues of corruption. So how best can we get off this issue is that political leaders must find a way to invest more of these resources in energy mix. Once that resources are properly deployed into power generation, that will impact positively on industry. And when industries are impacted positively, it will impact on economic growth and development, and the citizens will be better for it at the end of the day. So we need to overcome that governance issue, particularly corruption in Africa, that has been a bane in terms of African development.
So now that the UK is funding this project, being part of its plan to aid South Africa's move or shift to renewable energy, do you foresee a situation where some other African country over time will be picked as a next country to support in this regard?
Yes, I think so. This may just be, in my view, that this recent project may just be a kind of baseline project that will be replicated after the 24 months of delivery on this project. So let's hope that most African countries have relationship with the UK based on their colonial ties. So hopefully, maybe these projects will go to other countries in Africa. but the volume of investment, we may not be able to get that same level of investment in other African countries. But by and large, whatever level of investment we have to transit to renewable energy that is supported by the UK will be a welcome development.
Let's look at the conversation around the transition to renewable energy. Yes, is on the table. Several, big nations, they've taken that conversation to another level. But you also have this shortfall of still sticking to coal, fossil fuel, and the rest. How do you assess the disposition to this transition to renewable energy in Africa?
For me, I've always had a different view in terms of renewable energy. It's good that we have transit to renewable energy, but the global north that are pushing us into the renewable energy mix are equally investing massively on the traditional means of energy. Therefore, our governments in Africa must equally find a way to develop other sources of energy beyond the alternative that is being canvassed globally. Therefore, we have massive deposit of coal in Nigeria. The government should be thinking of investing in that aspect. China, for example, see have massive investment in terms of coal for energy. Even Germany and some other countries. So why is it that the global south is being pushed into the renewable energy mix, where most of those technologies will still come from the global north? So there's a need to balance in terms of expediency for our energy challenge to invest in both the traditional and renewable energy for us to be able to transit in the long term. So we have the energy policy is 2040, so we still have a long time to achieve that here in Africa. So we need to have a mix from the traditional and renewable energy. Those are my personal views.
All right, now talking about having a mix, this technology with which Globelec would use to build this battery storage system, if it had been won by a local company, do you think in terms of the cost, it would have been reduced? What happened to the local tech companies, the local power generation companies developing local technologies for problems like this? The resources are here. Most of the resources are here in Africa when we talk about renewable energy, but the technology is what is missing. What happens to the capacity of the local companies here?
Globelec may not be able to do that project alone. You just hear when you sign a major bid, you only see the major bid company in the public space. So the other, within that value chain, in terms of the service that will be provided, the other local South African companies that we lend support in terms of the project in developing those battery systems. So the other local companies who are going to be service provider in terms of technology, in terms of human capacity. So we only just hear Globelec as the major bid. So the other smaller companies that will be there. So in the long run, it will be beneficial to technology provider in South Africa, either in terms of the human capacity, in terms of the IT skills, and some raw material input that is needed for that project. I'm sure it will be beneficial to South Africa beyond the major Globelec, which is the leading power generation company in Africa.
What are some of the peculiar issues that Africa is battling with when it comes to energy mix or transition to renewable energy? And then do you see Africa being at the receiving end in this game of transition, especially when it comes to the issue of technology?
No, I don't think so. I think what we just need is the political will to drive the process. Africa is gifted with natural endowment, and some of those natural endowments principally are in the realm of alternative energy mix. We have sunshine, we have hydro, we have other. So the government need to find a way to invest, have a mix of investment, then develop technology, Then one of the major impediments into energy generation or distribution, particularly in Nigeria, was the powerful Abuja, where everything was domiciled. Now that you have that law repealed, where local government, state, and other subnational companies can invest in that sector, maybe within the shortest possible time, that story will change. So that challenge in terms of being the receiving end may not necessarily be there. So communities can generate energy based on their peculiarity, based on the source of other raw material that can power renewable energy. So the government needs to invest now that we have mini grids elsewhere. And the example of geometrics in Aba is a welcoming development. And I'm sure since that investment was successful, some other investors may want to invest in other industrial clusters where they can recoup their money within the shortest time possible.
Now, let's bring the conversation home, because it's always important when you go around the world to also come back home and look at the significance of the subject for the day to your country. Our country, Nigeria, if you look at the capacity of South Africa when it comes to electricity, it's over 50,000 megawatts, the domestic capacity of South Africa. Here in Nigeria, it's another ballgame. What do you think Nigeria can learn from South Africa? What is South Africa doing differently that Nigeria can imbibe? And also looking at the significance of our situation here, what could be done to improve power generation in Nigeria?
Number one, governance, good governance. Then corruption has been a bane of that sector in particular. So if we remove corruption to a very large extent, that will help. Number two, why is South African making massive investment in the energy sector? And what is the benefit of that kind of investment? Those are some of the benchmarks we should be looking at. We're talking about 4,000, a far cry from over 50,000. And there's a new investment transiting into renewable energy with that kind of massive investment. And we're here talking about who is responsible for increase in tariff, where even what you generate is even inadequate to even cater for domestic purposes. So the lesson here, or the takeaway for us, is that the government needs to recalibrate the process of how we can sustain an energy mix that is beneficial to industrial businesses, domestic, and other sector of the Nigerian economy. So therefore, since even Globelec is already doing business with the government, the idea is to scale up some of those projects which Globelec already have a technical competence to handle. So therefore, with the new window to subnational government in terms of your capacity to generate energy, then I think there should be massive investment in that area, particularly at the subnational level. The mini grid should be sustained. So once you're able to do that, then we can be on track. But if we make a comparative analysis between Nigeria and South Africa, I think we're just scratching the surface. Therefore, we must challenge ourselves as a people to see how we can address this energy problem, which is not even good for small and medium enterprises. Most companies are passing the bulk of energy to consumers, and that's why we're crying about the cost of living. Therefore, the government must wake up to its responsibility. Other investors, particularly banks, must equally invest in that sector so that we can grow the energy mix in a sustainable manner that will benefit the citizens.
Talking about growing the energy mix, this project is a national project, and it is aimed at supporting the integration of other types of power, like solar and wind, onto the grid. But here in Nigeria, the situation is different. We have a national grid supported by hydropower, and that's running alone as a standalone. and every other type of energy that is being developed is majorly run by the private sector and is not integrated. Why hasn't it been possible to have an integrated grid?
No, the grid is there, but the volume of generation is a major challenge. So we need to scale up generation and make some investment even on the grid that has collapsed severally. I think the grid itself is challenged, so we need to make an investment in that grid itself before you can integrate other mix of energy that can go into the national grid. So, and that's what I spoke to earlier, when that the government must find a way to see how they can sustain more investment in that sector, whether it's a PPP arrangement or other key investors who can recoup their investment. There's a challenge between Genco, Disco, in terms of not even able to meet up with the capacity of what they were given, where the government deregulated that sector. There's still a challenge. They can't even meet up. Even the government itself is owing some of the Disco. They need to pay those money up so that they can improve on their operational efficiency. So the national grid is there, but we need to improve on it, then integrate other energy mix into it. So I think it should be a national project that we need to address. This 4,000 is just a tip in the iceberg, and we need to improve on the energy mix. If we must do well, because we've been campaigning for to sustain ourselves in terms of what we consume locally rather than our dependence on import. But if the energy is not there to propel industry, then there's going to be a problem.
Now, let's talk about the right investment in renewable energy. You are obviously showing here in Nigeria where you have over-reliance on the national grid. And according to International Energy Agency, the grid has collapsed in the last 6 years 46 times because of the over-reliance on the national grid. Now, let's talk about the right investment that should take place in renewable energy in Nigeria. Nigeria has it in abundance. You have solar, you have gas, and all sorts. Now, what should be the starting point? Knowing fully well that the president earlier this year signed into law the electricity bill, one or two or few companies have taken advantage of that. But what should be the starting point, the investment in renewable energy, so that we shift the conversation from the national grid?
No, the point is that since the law was amended, it gives subnational government some window to invest in that sector. So before now, maybe in the last 2 years, where this law was amended, it was impossible for states, local government, and even some independent power producer to operate in that sector. Now that that has been deregulated, like Blessing asked earlier, we have this renewable energy mix already there. So to what extent can we pull those resources into the national grid for sustainable energy supply? So those are the key questions. One, strengthen the national grid. Then this mini grid operation must be sustained so that they can cater for specific industrial clusters, and that the over-reliance on the national grid will not be there. So, but in the final analysis, we need an integrative approach to the energy sector, like what South Africa is currently doing. That will help us to reduce those challenges.
There's this argument that the pricing for electricity is not right in Nigeria, and that if Nigeria were to attract the kind of investment that it needs for sustainable power, then the pricing of electricity will not be what it is currently. It will increase further. Do you subscribe to that thought?
First and foremost, what is important is to even generate the electricity. And then the issue of pricing and competition, we'll be able to deal with those challenges. Where you don't even have adequate supply of energy in the first place, and you are trying to give a pricing regime that is not sustainable in the first instance. So once you have more power generation then competition naturally would drive the price down based on the law of demand and supply. So the challenge for now here is that even the electricity is not even there to consume, and you're even raising the prices in the first instance. Give us the energy, and I'm sure some people will be able to pay then. But then when you have more people providing that service, then competition, just like what happened in the telecom sector. It took some massive savings when the telephone came earlier to be able to buy into that space. But now you can just walk into any operator and you get the same card. So I'm sure that once we have a reasonable supply of energy, the pricing will not be a major challenge.
Using the example of the telecommunication industry, when it was privatized, we saw different providers come into the space and there is competition, or at least to an extent. But in this case of the power sector, it's been more than 11 years that it's been privatized. And the hope that there will be competition that will lead to better service delivery and less pay from the end of the consumer is still looking like a dream. What are the issues?
At the time of the deregulation in that sector, some of the due diligences on the companies that acquire some of those companies, whether they are Genco, Disco, whatever name they are called, the due diligence were not properly done. Number two, the investment in those sectors were not adequate to prepare those changes. And I think the government was in a hurry to a very large extent, particularly the government agency that privatized those companies. I'm sure after 11 years, if those due diligence in terms of what is right to be done by those companies that bought those government enterprises over, 11 years after, this language of incompetence and inefficiencies of those sectors should have been taken care of. So the government had a responsibility in terms of how they privatized that process. Those who even invested in those projects did not even have the right investment to sustain those businesses. So going forward, I'm sure some of those businesses can be re-evaluated with a view to see how more funds can be injected or more investment can be attracted to sustain that sector.
Now, let's wrap up with this. Taking a clue from the Red Sand project, which the UK government is committing over $300 million, South Africa was able to attract the UK government to its power sector, and they are committing this huge sum of money. What do you think Nigeria can do to attract international investors to its power sector?
Number one, the governance template must be transparent so that investors will feel that when they bring their money here, their investment is safe. Number two, the enabling environment beyond the government. What kind of regulatory regime in terms of supervision, in terms of tax holidays that will sustain new businesses in those areas. So once those environments are improved upon, then more investment will be attracted to that sector.
All right, thank you very much, Sam Orovwuje, for your thoughts on the issues discussed today as it concerns the UK funding of what would be the biggest stand-alone battery storage system in Africa when it is completed in South Africa.
Thank you.
Early exchange, shaping policy, advancing development.